Namaste ji. In the recent days, I have read about rebirth and reincarnation. So I'm having a lot of doubts and questions in my mind. So the first thing I want to ask you is that real? Does reincarnation or rebirth exist? It's like, what's your view on it?
Sure, that's a very interesting question. And this rebirth, it's a very fancy topic, right? And a lot of many of us do believe in rebirth, and then they also believe in karma, and it's linked to that. And some of us do believe that one life, right? Eat, drink, make merry, and it's over,
So,
right? So, see, I take a clear stance that rebirth does exist. And why do I say so? Because I would put this into two broad buckets. I'll prove one by Shabda Praman and one by Anuman Praman. As far as Shabda Praman is concerned, what is it? First, what does Shabda Praman mean? It basically implies that we refer to authentic bodies of knowledge or authentic
okay.
texts and see as to what what do they have to say. And from that perspective, if I look at the Vedas, if I look at the Bhagavad Gita, there are enough number of instances wherein they clearly talk about rebirth. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna advises Arjuna in the second chapter, 22nd mantra. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirna anyani samyati navani dehi. It basically means that the way a person or the way we all, right, we shed our old clothes, our torn out clothes and wear new ones. Similarly, the Atma or the soul, right, it in a way sheds away this old worn out body and takes in a new one, right? So it's, and not just in this one particular shloka, in multiple places, right? Sri Krishna advises Arjuna saying that, and which implies clearly that there is rebirth. If I go back to the Vedas, which is the most authentic body of knowledge, and we look at the Rig Veda, it says, Asunite punaha asmasu chakshuhu punaha pranamiha no dehi bhogam jyok pashyema surya ucharantam anumate mrilayanaha swastihi. Which basically implies, O Ishwar, may we be blessed in this birth with similar prana, eyes, etc., as in the previous birth.
Okay.
Even in the Yajurveda, punar manaha punar ayur agan punaha pranaha punaratma ma agan punaschakshuhu punashrotram agan vishwanaro adabdastanupa agnirnaha patu durita davadyat. Which basically says once again, in rebirth, may we once again be blessed with mind, age, prana, spirit, eyes, ears, and all other sense organs. And may Ishwar protect us from all evils.
Okay, so you said about Shabda Praman. So what about Anuman Praman ji? Are there any evidences with that we can conclude that there is reincarnation or rebirth?
Sure, absolutely. So there are n number of instances, right, wherein children between age 2 and 4, right, largely have come up with clear memories of their previous births. Indeed, there has been this American psychiatrist, Ian Stevenson, who has documented over 2,000 plus cases across United States, Burma, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, and of course India as well, wherein he has come across these children, right, who have clear memories of the previous births. He kind of traveled across the globe, talked to these children, talked to their parents. Also, whatever they were referring to in the previous lives, he went to those locations, talked to those people to show whether this was just a figment of imagination or was this really true. The most interesting and the well-researched and documented case that I would like to quote over here is of this boy called James Leninger, who was born in the year 1998 to a set of parents in Louisiana in the US. And at the age of about 4, he started having some nightmares. And he started talking about as to how, he was in a fighter plane and how he just needs to get out of it. The fighter plane has been shot. right? And his parents were obviously quite worried, and they're wondering as to what's really happening. So a couple of incidents, they just ignored it, and after that they realized there's something more to it. And then they started, kind of talking to him more, took him to a few psychiatrists in the town, and they realized that he had very specific memories of having been shot down in a fighter plane. He also named the type of aircraft. It was a Corsair aircraft that flew off a fighter of an aircraft carrier. And he was, the way he described, the entire incident, they did realize that it possibly refers to a certain incident that happened during the World War II. Then they spoke to a few survivors of World War II, and they realized that there was this pilot called James Houston, who indeed on March 3, 1945, he flew off in a Corsair aircraft off an aircraft carrier called Netoma Bay. And the aircraft was hit by Japanese fire, and the aircraft got destroyed, and obviously the pilot also was killed. So this particular incident, as I mentioned, at times children do say something, parents don't ignore, but this case was very, very well documented, which clearly proved that he had memories of previous life, and that basically implies that there is rebirth. Yeah.
So that's so from 1998 to then 1945, it's like nearly 50 years. So after 50 years, a person has been reborn, and then it's really amazing. So are there any cases in India, that similar cases that have been registered or noted?
Yeah, in India as well. Indeed, one is a pretty old case. I'll possibly give you two cases in India. So
Okay.
one case dates back to the year 1926, right? Wherein there was this young girl called Shanti Devi, who was born in Delhi. Yeah. And she clearly exhibited memories of past life. And she mentioned that, hey, listen, I was born, my previous name was Lugdi Devi, and somewhere in Mathura. Nice, no, Delhi and Mathura are,
Yeah.
not too far.
Not too far.
And she had very clear memories and sense of who was her husband, how did she die, right? And so she started talking about it. And interestingly, at that point of time, this news also reached Mahatma Gandhi. And he set up a small commission to really understand whether, this is just figment of imagination, or some hallucination, or was there really truth in it? So this took this young girl, right, to her previous village in Mathura. And she could very clearly identify as to who her previous husband was, her in-laws, right, some close relatives, right? And even at that point of time, this was clearly documented, was there in the press, etc., as to how this particular child had clear memories of a previous birth. So in the year 2021, right, you had this 7-year-old boy called Chandraveer, right, born in this in this district called Mainpuri in Uttar Pradesh, and he had clear memories of having died 12 years back. He had actually drowned in a canal, right, and so he kept on insisting to his parents to take him back to his old village, and his father's name was Rohit Kumar, and he said that he kept on insisting. The parents were a little concerned initially, but then they took him out there, and he could go recognize his parents. He could his school master, he was there, Mr. Yadav. He recognized him and said, "This is Subhash sir," right? And the villagers also gathered because just 8 years back they had lost him. Right, and they were
Yeah.
clear. He had clear memories, and they were completely verified. The media also was there. The media also interviewed, and this was there in the Indian press. So there have been enough cases, in India as well of rebirth.
So people will generally be able to believe and understand this just because it's been documented and it is come out in the press. Otherwise, it's really amazing to know about this.
That's absolutely right.
I've also read in few articles and this thing saying that you still be connected with the people that whom you know in your past life, in your present life. Say, for example, your friends in your present life would be your relatives in your past lives, and vice versa. Is it true? Is this concept there, or it's just again imagination and other rumor thing?
Yeah. See, to my mind, we cannot generalize this, saying that in your next rebirth, you'll always be related to your, to your previous relative. I don't think that can be generalized. But yes, there have been cases. For example, there was a case in the U.S. Once again, indeed, Ian Stevenson has written this book called,
Okay.
Children in the Past Lives. So there he also writes a case about this young boy who was born about 18 months after the grandfather's death. His name was Gus Taylor, and he started at the age of just about 2 years. He started recollecting, and he saw his granddad's photograph and said, "Oh, listen, that's me," right? And he could clearly come up with some events in the family that had occurred in the past, which he just had no way of knowing, right? For example, one specific event that he recollected was that his grandfather's daughter, that's his aunt, right, had been murdered, and her body was was kind of disposed of in a certain specific area, right, in the Bay Area. And so he actually narrated that incident as well, which was there's just no other way, right? This young child of just 2 years age could know that. So this was a case wherein it was in the same family as well. But I don't think you can generalize it though.
Okay. So, till now, the cases that we saw, most of the people who are involved in this reincarnation and rebirth are kids, are children. So, none of the adult, we haven't seen an adult coming up and saying that, oh, in my previous birth I was this, that. So, why isn't that only kids are able to feel it and adults are not? Is there anything based on the age or something?
Sure. See, even indeed, Ian Stevenson, and indeed his research work was carried forward by one Professor Trucker, and who's still around. He's still researching, more and more such cases, and they do mention in the research as well that most of these memories, they tend to fade away with time, and thank God for that, right? Now, how do you think the world would be like if we all remembered, our past lives? It's difficult for us to deal with our emotions, right, in
But
the current life itself. Right, so
But it would be amazing because we know the question paper would be leaked, so we know our past mistakes and we'd be able to correct it this time.
right. See, that's a design of the supreme force. Yeah, I do agree with you on this aspect that if we actually knew or had an intrinsic sense without actual memories, I think yes, it would be great. Having actual memories of past lives, knowing actually who my husband was in the previous life, who my wife was in the previous life, right? I think that would complicate matters quite a lot,
True.
right? But yes, some sense or some inkling, right, in the previous life or what challenge I faced. I think that possibly, yes, I agree with you that possibly that was there. We could have, got more conscious of and had a more better sense of the cause and effect relationship.
Is there any other proof for proving rebirth, or is there any other side of it?
Sure. There's one additional aspect which I would once again bring under Anuman Praman only, right? Take a step back, and you'd agree that every day there are lakhs of children who are born on this planet, on this earth, right? And these children, if you look at them, they are of different orientations. They have different, some children will be very active right from day one, right? They'll be more observant. Some children will be a little dull. Some children may have a very serious, disease, a hole in the heart, right? Some children could be very healthy. Some children could be dull. Some children, right? So you notice these differences, and even as they grow up, right, you can see difference in the orientations. Now, for a moment, you may say that, oh, listen, this is due to genetics, due to biological reasons, due to difference in nutrition of the mothers, right? You may come up with those reasons. But then, I'm sure you've seen even identical twins being very different, right? Born to the same set of parents at the same time, right? Even those twins, they may look alike, but their orientations are different, right? And these differences you can also see in animals, interestingly, not just human beings. You can see two dogs, right? Could be once again twins, but have different orientations. One could be playful, right? One could be much more reserved.
Calm.
Yeah. So now this difference that's there, right? How do you explain this? The Shastras go back and tell us that, listen, these are basically impressions or samskars from the previous birth that gets carried forward. You do accumulate samskars in this birth as well, but you also are a function of the samskars you had in your previous birth. So in a way, to my mind, these differences that we notice, right, in different souls, and as I mentioned, even identical twins, right, clearly proves rebirth.
So you're trying to say that the soul from the previous life will carry that personality and tendency to the next life also?
That's right. From the previous birth, what we carry forward are these samskars or impressions. See, anything that we do, right, any action that we commit, has two broad outcomes. One is a memory, and one is a samskar. What's a memory? A memory is a gross, recollection of facts, right? For instance, let's take an example. So there is an accident victim, right? You see on the road. So you stop by and you help that accident victim. Now, for the next few days, you will have very vivid details as to what were you wearing that day, right? What time was it? What was the venue? Which day of the week? What was the if it was a vehicle was involved? What was the make of the vehicle? What was the victim wearing? You'll have such very specific details. This is memory. What is samskar or impression? See, when you help that particular person, you imbibe within you a samskar of helping someone, right? That also gets embedded within you. And this, in a way, is what also forms your habit, what forms your orientation. Memory is gross, samskar is subtle. And this samskar is formed on your mind and on your soul. And this carries with you from one birth to the other. It helps you within the same birth as well, and also carries it
to the next
forward
birth.
to the next birth. Let me give one more example, just to prove this point further.
Okay.
Do you fear death?
Everyone does.
Everyone does, isn't it? Now, in this lifetime, have you experienced death?
No.
No, isn't it? You may have seen someone possibly dying, right? Also, maybe just here and there someone, right?
Yeah.
But you have the fear of death. And everyone does, as you yourself said. Why do we have this fear of death when we have not experienced it, right, in this particular birth? Take, for example, a child, right? A child, takes a knife and he just thinks this is something to play. He doesn't have fear of it, right? Until he cuts himself a couple of times and then he knows, oh, no, this is something dangerous. And so he has fear of it, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
But for the first time, he doesn't have fear of it because he hasn't experienced the cut.
Experienced it.
Then why do you have fear of death when you haven't experienced it in this particular birth? It's a question for us to ponder. The way I look at this thing, and the way Shastras also talk about it, is that this is because of your
soul,
previous samskars. You have, you have taken birth and you have died multiple times, thousands and thousands of times. And every time, right, say I died, right, I did have that fear of death. Right? Because this fear of death, remember, is not only for human beings, even for an ant. Right? You try and chase an ant, chase a mosquito, right? You can feel the fear that the mosquito has. Right? So because this fear we have experienced, not only as human beings, but also as animals, multiple times in our previous births, right, that a clear samskar is formed on our soul. And that samskar is of the fear of death. We don't have memory of it. We don't know as to previous birth how I died, right? Except in that one odd case, as I mentioned, that we spoke about, those rebirth cases, which
Yeah.
memories tend to fade away, right? But we definitely carry the samskar of it.
And I just have another question, that the soul, does it does it only take the human body or human form, or does one soul which has been a human in the past life, does it take another animal form in the next life? Thing.
So clearly, there are indeed, even the modern science, estimates the number of species at roughly about 80, 90 lakhs plus. The Shastras say about 84 lakhs, right? So there is 84 lakh species, and the human beings, the soul, right? It moves from one species to the other, or one, it could be, so it could be, to answer your question first straight, it's not only human beings. So the soul could be taking birth as a human, the next birth could be as a dog, as an ant, as a mosquito, could be anything else, which depends on the karma, right, of that particular soul. Now over here, we need to remember that the human species, right, that particular species is known as the karma yoni. Yoni means species, right, as the karma yoni, where you're responsible for your actions. Whereas the birth in other species are known as the bhoga yoni. So bhoga yoni is where you only face the result of your actions. There is no fresh accumulation of karma in the bhoga yoni. That means in any of the species apart from human beings, you're not accumulating fresh karma, because there is no right or wrong over there. A goat grazing into the field of someone's nearby, someone else's field, you cannot say, oh, the goat is wrong, right? A dog just biting someone, you cannot pass an ethical judgment on the dog that he did, he did something, something wrong per se. The way we pass judgments for human beings, wherein we have a certain philosophical perspective around right or wrong, around dharma or adharma, right? That's not the case with regard to the animals, right? So yes, the soul does take birth in different species or different yonis, but it's only in the human birth, right, or manushya yoni as they call, wherein you are accountable for your actions.
Okay.
Whereas as far as the bhoga yoni is concerned, or all of the species are concerned, you're only facing the result of your actions. There's no further fresh accumulation of accountable karma as we speak.
So, as you said, that the soul from a human being in one birth will get converted into a soul for an animal in the next birth. So, why does this need to happen? Why a soul of a human being needs to be downgraded and then to an animal soul? So, what is the reason for this?
See, overall, given a choice, would you want to downgrade? No, right?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not our discretion, right? It's not our choice. Essentially, you being reborn as a human being, or you're getting downgraded as an animal, could be also a plant, by the way, right? That also has soul. Okay, that depends on your karma, and the supreme force, that's the Ishwar, gives the result of your karma in 3 different ways. That's what the Shastras say. Rishi Patanjali in Yog Darshan says that these 3 aspects are Jati, Ayu, and Bhog. What does Jati mean? Jati means species, the first one, right? So which birth do you take in your post your current death depends on your karmic baggage, right? Your as far as your broader karmas are concerned, there once again there are 3 types of karma. So what we call the sanchit karma, right? The prarabdha karma and the kriyamana karma. Your sanchit karma is your accumulated karmic baggage, right? Prarabdha karma is that part of your karmic baggage that is manifesting itself as of now, right? So your sanchit karma, based on your samchit karma, which is your past karmic baggage, right? It manifests itself as your prarabdha, what we also sometimes loosely refer to as fate, right? And you take a fresh species in your current birth.
So, does this reincarnation and rebirth keep on happening? Does this have an end? Where does a soul actually?
Where does it stop, right? So essentially, uh, you're right. So does this cycle go on forever? The answer is no. Uh, and that's where I'm sure you must have heard about the concept of moksha, right? Or we call mukti, right? What's moksha? Moksha is reaching that state or reaching that particular stage wherein you come out of this continuous cycle of birth and death. And this happens, well, this is by the way possible only from the stage of a human being, right? As a human being, you have this choice in front of you, right? Wherein you can, with your true efforts, and there are three ways or there are three steps to it. By proper knowledge, that says Shuddha Jnana, Shuddha Karma, and Shuddha Upasana. That means right knowledge, right karma, and the appropriate or the right bhakti or upasana. You can move towards a particular state wherein you then move out to the cycle of birth and death and move towards moksha. So that's the broad concept.
Thank you, Ji. Most of the questions that I had in the beginning of the video got cleared now. So now we talked about karma and moksha. Now I'm more eager to learn more about that. So I hope we could do another video on karma and
Sure.
moksha,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.